Morning, everybody. Welcome to the show. It's Friday, known as Funky Friday on my show on the Morning Night Live. And I am very, very happy to have a great guest today, who I'll introduce you to in a minute. Looking forward to this. We're going to be talking about, well, I named the show Gender Rebellion just because of the name of our guest, the group she founded. And it's a topic that I talk a lot about, the gender ideology battles, I would say, and just the struggle for how we're protecting kids, how we're protecting women and women's spaces and things like that. Well, this person that we're talking to today is not only on the front lines, she kind of created some of the front lines over the last couple of years. And there's lots of people who have worked on this for years, and I think they all deserve credit. But I'm lucky to have Jennifer Thomas on today. So after the intro, we'll meet Jennifer and talk a little bit about that. And that's the show for today. So here we go. Are you ready? Johnny, play the intro. Ladies and gentlemen, coming to you live from the Lucky Dog Studio in a hidden location somewhere in the upper Midwest of the United States of America, it's a brother making his own way, but with all the wrong opinions. Welcome to the Morning Night Live with your host, yours truly, P. Dog Night. Yes! It's time to stop that music. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Morning Night Live. I'm your host, Marty, also known as P-Dog Night on the internet. Welcome back to the P-Dog Night channel on this Friday, Funky Friday, around here, the 30th of September, 2022. And today I have one of the guests during Project 10,000, where we're trying to grow the channel, but also talk to some very interesting people. And so that's what we're doing today. Today, my guest is Jennifer Thomas. Jen is a women's rights campaigner and activist. Her activism began when it was discovered that a multi-million-dollar medical supply corporation was polluting the communities around her. And her activism helped result in the company's closure within 3 years. Over the past 2 years, she's worked with numerous advocates for women and children and served as a grassroots team lead for Women's Declaration International. She's also the co-founder of RevFoXX, REV, capital F, small O, double X, meaning women. There's a definition for that. And also RevFem Rebellion, and continues to her work as a boots on the ground organizer for Speaker's Corner, Free Speech for Women, Save Women's Sports, Keep Prisons Single Sex, and Women's Declaration International. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Jen Thomas. Good morning. And how are you today?
Good morning. Great. How are you? Excited?
I'm fantastic. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there's a little bit of a lag in our connection, so I'm going to do my best not to talk over Jen, because what she says today is probably going to be a lot more important than what I say. But the first thing I guess I want to start with is tell us a little about your organization, the RevFoXX, and also RevFem Rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
Say it again.
RevFoXX, RevFoXX. That is an organization I started with a group of men and women. That was part of the reason why I started another organization, because I wanted to work with men. RevFem Rebellion is women. And we're just a group of basically adults, rational adults, that got together and decided that we were gonna, work hard to end gender ideology, right? So there's a lot of people looking around saying, what the hell's going on? We don't want our kids involved in this. We don't want our kids being taught things in schools that, they have no business teaching. They have no business confusing our children about their sex. So it wasn't too hard to put together a group, and we have, graphic artists, we have, a tech person, we have security people. So now once I sort of put that in place, I decided that, I had been banned from Twitter. I had been banned from Bumble. I had been banned from pretty much, anytime I went and spoke the truth, I got banned. So I knew there wasn't free speech on the internet. So I wanted to test it out live and in person. And what happened was there's sporadic free speech across America. I mean, sometimes the police will protect you, sometimes they won't. Most of the time if you advertise a speaking event, we will have a group of maybe 100 or so of Antifa trying to silence what is basically 10 women coming together to speak about the harms of gender ideology. So 10 women decide to have a speaker's corner, and 100 people come to silence us. And I mean, that's at least 50% men. So there's 50 dudes trying to shut 10 women up from talking about the harms that their children are going through, because they're mostly middle-aged women at the speaker's corner. And so that's the situation in America on the ground. I mean, we don't really have free speech. Not if they're sending people to stop us. We don't. So that was really what I wanted to do with Speaker's Corner, was test in reality, in real life, what was going on with free speech. And what that revealed is that we have a lot of work to do. So what I do now is kind of find a venue. I convinced the police to protect us. I have to go now to the police stations and show them videos of what's happened before. And hopefully they will, because there's been times in Port Townsend where they didn't. And that's the political situation where the mayor basically just, put the word out not to follow through with arrests. And but like in other cities, it's better. Like Pittsburgh, I thought we were going to run into problems, but the police were great. So you have to kind of feel that situation out. And what I'm doing with that is like now that people can see that the police will protect them in Pittsburgh, other women know that venue is safe. They can come up behind me and continue the speakers corners, right? So I'm testing the water and breaking into new territory, making sure that like women that want to do speakers corners after me aren't gonna run into some of the problems that I'm testing for, right? I want to know if the police will protect us. I want to know how active Antifa is in that town. A lot of times I'm planning on doing speakers corners at the state capitol, so I know that I'll get that extra reinforcement of state capitol police. So I'm just sort of feeling that out and breaking ground in America. There's other women that have joined me. There's a crew in Chicago. There's a crew in Madison. We're all doing speakers corners, but I'm probably the only one that's pushing like in different areas, like going into different states and doing them. But that needs to be done. I mean, it's not a good situation in America with free speech. And if there's not free speech for women, there's not free speech for men. Free speech only works when everybody has it, right? So I mean, it is something that I feel like that's why I wanted to work with men. I feel like they should be interested in that because, like that's what that reveals. And if we lose that, we are in big trouble, big trouble. It's something worth hanging on to.
So let's talk about the speakers quarters, because not everyone in my audience knows necessarily what you're doing. So and let's take one specific example. You mentioned the Port Townsend one, which I watched some of that on the live stream. I think Amy had it live streamed. My audience doesn't know who Amy is either. But so let's start with what the purpose of that particular speakers corners was, what you do to organize it, and what it is, because like you said, you've been banned or at least stifled on certain social media. So sometimes they say, well, the private company can do whatever they want, they don't have to platform you, why don't you go out and stand on a soapbox? I think that might be the impetus of what you're doing with speakers corners. So talk about that.
Yeah. Well, Port Townsend wasn't a speaker's corner. It was a press conference for Julie Jaman, who is an 80-year-old woman who was taking a shower at the YMCA. She heard a man's voice. When she came out to investigate it, there was a 19-year-old man that identified as a woman helping, I think, maybe 3 or 4 7-year-olds get out of their bathing suits, 7-year-old girls. He's in the ladies' locker room. So she said something. She said, you don't belong here. And then the whole town, the people at the Y basically revoked her membership for life. The whole town, took the side of this 19-year-old man that's helping 7-year-old girls change in the ladies' locker room.
And you mean a trans identified male who's identifies as female, correct? So it was,
yes, so he identifies as female.
Yes, like a male human.
Yeah, and 6 months prior, he was a boy, a man human. And then 6 months later, he's got a job assisting children, young girls, with their bathing suits in a locker room. So, I mean, this safeguarding violation is so obvious and it's so absurd that we are even having a conversation like that, from what Amy, because that was Amy's. I just assisted Amy. That wasn't a RevFoXX production. I went because Amy and I are good friends, and I was worried about her because I knew how dangerous, the West Coast is. And she was worried, so I was like, well, I have a lot of boots on the ground experience. I was like, I'll come and help. And that was crazy. That was for like 350, 400 people basically mobbed us. There was a man that came and got on the ground like a worm. Okay. A 6'2" dude. That's tactic. He's like a drug addict. Antifa hires, I believe, I don't have proof, but I believe Antifa hires drug addicts, vagrants, people that are destitute and, don't have a whole lot going on in their life, to come and threaten and intimidate. And in that case, assault women. I was assaulted at Port Townsend. I was pushed, shoved, my shoe. The guy tried to steal my phone when he didn't get my phone because I had videotaped him, or I'm sorry, phone taped him. And he knew that I had his picture without a mask. So then he went after my phone in between an 80-year-old man's legs. Okay. That's how desperate these people are to stop us from speaking. They will literally get on the ground in a crowded arena and do whatever their drug addict mind has come up with that they think is going to disrupt our event. And this is a grown ass man. I'm a woman. I'm like 5'4". He's 6'2", rolling, he's still 6'2" on the ground. And I'm struggling with him over my phone. And then he gets pissed because I got the phone and put it in my pocket, so he couldn't get it. And then he grabbed my shoe. He grabbed my leg right through this 80-year-old man's leg who was like kind of blocking him. This guy grabs my leg, forces my foot in between his legs and like squeezes my foot in between his legs to get my shoe. I mean, it was like fetishy and gross. Like, this is how they're behaving. This is how they're treating women. And we are there just to talk about Julie Jaman and her getting kicked out of the Y, and that's what that turned into. If you hashtag Port Townsend, you'll find some videos so you can see it, but it's ridiculous. And the police did nothing.
It's always fascinating to me because you're a group of women who are there to speak your mind, and you got all these little Antifa. I have no better term other than fuckers, who are coming around and who are supposedly, and normally they'd be saying, "Oh, protect women and protect all women," but then they're so quick to commit violence on women who do not agree with what they think. But okay, so let's move then to like you did Philadelphia and Chicago recently. Let's go talk about Philadelphia. Talk about the organizing, what your purpose at Philadelphia was, and what the message was, and then what the experience was, because it's similar. It seems to be similar each one of these I see.
Yeah. So Philly was sort of the kickoff of the free. I had been saying I was going to do Speaker's Corner, but things kept coming up. So I was working with RevFem Rebellion, and we had focused on Will Thomas. First, we focused on the social media platforms, and we did a nationwide protest with like 30 cities and 50 women. So first we did that. That was like we're trying to, I have been on the ground for about 2 years, and I've tried all kinds of different tactics, because when they know we're coming, they protest, right? And this scares women. This scares women that there's going to be all these men trying to stop us. So we've tried various tactics over the years. So the free speech for women, the first protest was Guy Fawkes Day, and we called it Gal Fox Day, and we made all these posters that said, feminine, or Facebook bans feminists but not rapists, right? And then we had one that said YouTube and one that said Twitter. So and then free speech for women, a big poster, free speech for women. So what we did was we sent these posters out. Women volunteered to go in front of the headquarters in their state and take a picture and have like a little mini protest if they felt comfortable, right? So first, if they were it was like an entry point for volunteers and women to stand up. So first they could either take a picture with the poster in front of the headquarters of Twitter, or they could get a bunch of women together and protest with the posters, or they could just do it with a friend. So it was like their level of comfort, right? So that was, because it was hard to get women to join us on the street, right? So we were trying different things. So then we had done that free speech poster, and I wanted to continue the free speech stuff with RevFem Rebellion, but I ended up moving to Pennsylvania, and Will Thomas was going on. So, and I was like, I'm not going to not focus on Will Thomas, because this is just, such a travesty that these young women worked their whole life, and, they're just getting blown out of the water. So once I moved to Pennsylvania and I was still with RevFem Rebellion, we focused on that. Then I finally like geared up with the new org to do the speakers corner, because that was a little more complicated.
I just had to put in when you say Will Thomas / Leah Thomas, the swimmer, is who she's talking about, just in case you're not sure who she's talking about. The male swimmer that is now an NCAA women's champion.
I wouldn't say that, but
well, yeah, exactly. So, so basically, you are actually doing the activism that some people talk about. And now I do have a few questions I want to go into. We got lots of time still. So in the gender ideology fight, we have the trans what's the trans activists, and then we have the gender critical, which includes a very large scope of people, but not necessarily all working together. So tell me tell me how your group deals with the general critical part of it, as far as, for example, okay, we're finding now we're discovering a bunch of children's hospitals that are basically advertising that they're doing gender surgeries, and they're being brought to attention by various elements on the internet that don't necessarily already cooperate with groups that have been doing this for years. And so I'm curious what their thoughts are on that.
Bring it on. Anybody that wants to come out and protest, do it your way. Just, we need everybody, and we want everybody. I honestly, the criticism that people have for other people that are doing this, I have none whatsoever. Just, if you're like, even if I don't like what you're doing, if you're doing something to promote reality, let's put it that way, I don't have to agree with your methods if it's helping stop gender ideology. Gender ideology in the gender industry is so harmful that literally I would applaud anybody that's working in the field. Like they may go about it differently than I do. I I have a way, I have my own style. Um, and I've been in this a long time, so I've tested the waters. So, I kind of have developed certain things that I won't and won't do. I believe in, nonviolent protest, right? Most people do. Um, but like even the definition of nonviolence, you'll get into arguments with about people. I mean, I had an argument with one of the RevFems about like when does nonviolent stop and self-protection begin, right? So because we're putting ourselves in danger, and I was like, if the woman next to me is getting her ass kicked, I'm not going to stand by and watch. So maybe I'm not nonviolent, like maybe, so like there's so like I don't really like judge people's, like when you'll see the first scene of what happened in the story, the headline or whatever, and I usually wait to find out what they say, because there's all kinds of weird circumstances. These people are they're crazy, like Antifa. First of all, they're not trans rights activists, they're anti-women's rights activists is what they are. That they're after the women. And if you can't if the men can't if our men can't protect the women, like what is that? Like throughout history, that means you've lost the war, right? So like, there's a bunch of men focusing on women, speaking about gender ideology. They're coming, they kick us off Twitter if we talk about it, and now in person, in live, they're coming to stop us. And like, is it a paid, is Antifa paid? Probably, I'm guessing. So like, this is the state basically, I think, using a workaround to shut us up. Now, do they have the police? Not in every city, they don't. But as we test the waters, we're going to find out. Like, I'm planning a speaker's corner in Austin. Now, I was in Austin for the October 8th Women's March. A bunch of us TERFs crashed that Women's March, and the police, the state police protected us. That was that last year or 2 years ago? I can't even remember. No, I think it was last year. But like, and I was under the misconception that like that we would be protected by the police every time. And then as I've been doing this, that is just not true. That's just not true. They will act like they're impartial. But like, how are you impartial when there's aggressive men coming after women? We're not doing anything. We're not following them around. We're not be intimidating them. We're not physically, going near them. These people are literally attacking us, and the police are just standing by and acting like this is an impartial thing. It's not impartial. So now police are conditioned to stand around and watch like 10 women get, abused by 100 people, including like 50 men. So it's like 50 men and 50 women. It just doesn't make sense. And you don't really know until you go out and do it, because I didn't know. That's why I went out. I was like, I have to find out what's going on in the real world. I can't just base my assumptions on Twitter or on YouTube or whatever, because they control they control those platforms, right? Like, those platforms are being controlled. Everything we say is being controlled on those platforms. So the only way to really know if there's free speech in America is to go out and test it. And now I've tested it, and I'm like, oh shit, we're in trouble. Because like, whatever you say about the private company that owns the platform, it's now spilled onto the street. So like, that argument is gone. It isn't private companies that own the platform that have, that are the only problem, right? Because we've tested that. So, I mean, that's really what I want to get out there is like, hey, we're testing free speech and it's not free, you know. Oh, I lost you. I
Yeah,
lost you. I
no, that
don't
was fine. I got
know.
it. I got it. There we go.
Okay.
Let me stop for a second. So let's talk. So let's talk more about the message that you're trying to convey, because I think it's a message that um, is shared by many different political ideologies. But in your particular events, you describe yourself as feminist, and I know that we talked about this in a space one time. But I want to talk about um, the feminist side of this, because I think one time you said you say more recently you haven't always been a feminist, but explain how that fits in, and as far as other ideologies that also support this same kind of message. So how does
Well,
feminism,
um,
yeah,
the feminism fits in because I mean, I would never say I was a feminist. I was always, I always had respect for women and myself. So, I mean, I think that's sort of a core feminist value. But I believe feminism is the tool in which we use when we're in trouble, right? So, like, yeah, I was never going to be a feminist, like, just unless something sparked it. And when I saw how dangerous ideology was, not just to women and children, but to to society, basically,
mhm.
um, I didn't really know who to turn to. Right. I had been paying attention to it for a while. I knew what was going on. I never really needed to be peaked. I mean, there were some reveals that happened to me, but like it didn't take much. I was like, whoa, that's dangerous, right? That's dangerous. This is coming in. It came in with Obama. Penny Pritzker and Jennifer Pritzker put it in with, made some kind of deal to get it in with him. So I've been following it for a while. Um, I followed the bathroom bill in North Carolina. I watched, the corporations leave. I saw like sort of just how powerful they were. So I was hoping, because I was fighting the medical supply corporation that was polluting my community. I was like within a mile of this basically environmental disaster that happened. So I was busy and I did not want to get into the GI fight because I had to fight Sterigenics, which was the medical supplies company. But I knew when I was grateful Trump made it in because I knew that the Dems and that party was pushing much harder with the gender ideology stuff. I am under no illusion that the Republicans are not, there isn't a chunk of them that are bought and paid for with the gender industry, but the Democrats were saying they were going to do it, right? If you went to Biden's um, website, he talked about it. So I knew that like if he got in, um, we were in real trouble. Um, and so
real quick,
the day after he got elected, yeah, I
real
started.
quick. Now, here's here's something interesting that you said, because the feminists who are gender critical understood that Trump would have been better than Biden. Is that hard to say for most, especially radical feminists? That's got to be hard. That's got to be hard.
Um,
Uh, a hard disconnect. And also the other question, and you can work this into, when you say that you're a feminist, and when you're talking about gender critical, gender critical. What did I say? Anyway, being gender critical, there's a whole nother section of feminists who are totally gung-ho on gender ideology, the intersectionalists. So there's really two different sides of that coin. So is this a feminist thing, or is this just a common sense? These people, there are two sexes and there's a reason, and it's all about reconcile that.
Yeah. Well, so after Trump didn't get elected, and I knew it was going to be, we're cooking with gas now, right? So I joined Twitter because like this is the trail to feminism, right? I had heard Meghan Murphy got ousted from Twitter, got banned. So I knew there was a group of radical feminists on Twitter. That's the only reason I knew. I wasn't even on social media before this, right? I was just like a normal, I had a business, I was, a PTA and Girl Scout mom, I had a troop, like I was busy with like, raising my family and working, so I didn't really know who to turn to, and I'm not in a church, right? So I don't have access to that. I'm agnostic, so like I'm not a churchgoer. I respect people's religion, but it wasn't for me, so I didn't have that community. And I thought, well, I guess it's I've always respected women, so I better look at these different feminisms and pick one because I got to find a group. I can't do this alone, right? So I went and I had heard of Kara Dansky. I'd followed Wolf for a while because I was following this subject too. So I knew a little bit about the feminists, but not much. And then I had Reg Dworkin. I mean, I had like
hang
go
on.
ahead.
About the gender critical feminists.
The TERFs, yeah, the trans exclusionary radical feminists, right?
Okay, because again,
right. So yeah,
the point is there's a whole section of the intersectional feminists or the lib fems or whatever people want to call them that are part of the impetus of everyone's the same. Anyone can be a man, anyone can be a woman if they feel like it, and there's no there's no feeling. I mean, it's like someone says well, I'm a woman because I feel like a woman, or I'm a woman because this is my experience of womanhood. Well, if you're a male, you don't have an experience of womanhood because that's physically impossible and mentally impossible. But anyway, so you were with and because I
was not with them.
Right. No, I'm aware of that. And but I want to make sure that we have a distinction, because I think some of this gender ideology, in my opinion, comes from feminism. And when it does. And as far as it used to be blurring the distinction between men and women, and that's what the liberal feminists do. And what's kind of refreshing about what's going on now, because there's a whole, like I said, many ideologies, many political it's interesting because there's a lot of conservatives who are in complete agreement with the radical feminists on this particular subject, and I tend to be a conservative. I've been a conservative for a long time, but I know that for the last probably 6-8 years, as I'm talking to people on Twitter or on YouTube or whatever, people that I've interacted with, and some are radical feminists who talk about this subject a lot and who are in complete agreement with my personal political and ideology or whatever, personal social ideologies, because there is a reality of there's the reality of sex. Okay. Now, gender is one of those things that has popped up in the last, I'd say 50 years as far as a topic, as being separate from sex, which in a sense, making it a social construct. But if it's a social construct, then what's the purpose of it? You still have to go back to physiology and sex, right? But so my interactions with some radical feminists in the last 6 to 8 years, where I go, oh, hey, here's something we have total common ground on. There is a reality. And so when you come up with a Leah Thomas I don't know that person's name. That person, the swimmer. Yes. When
it's William. His name is William. And if you put Leah, you'll see Leah is in the middle of William.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where he came up with his name.
Yeah, and I on YouTube I can get in trouble for so-called dead naming people, but which is okay. I'm not going to tell you what to say because this is a free speech zone, but whatever. But the one thing about that particular case that has really caught my mind is that feminists, on at least the ones that I interact with, acknowledge that there are differences between men and women. Now, some of those differences are good. Some of those differences can be bad. For example, men are more violent. But that's a whole function of testosterone. And that's a whole function of evolution, where testosterone makes you more violent, make you more averse to risk,
Well,
or less averse to risk. Things like that. So that
well, the
seems to be
difference isn't men are more violent, right? That it's not that men are more violent; it's that men are more powerful when they're violent, right? Like it's women are violent. Men have the muscle behind the violence to create more destruction. So it's not, I mean, the difference is, it's not like men are more violent. That's like, oh, well, women can be violent too. You get that a lot. I mean, you get so many arguments in this, but like it's the differences in size. On average, yes, on average.
I know that there are very aggressive, violent women, but on as a whole,
yes.
there are differences, and a lot of it has to do with physiology, size, testosterone. Testosterone's testosterone's a bitch. I got to tell you, because I know I know a woman who transitioned to male and started going on testosterone, and that was one of the first things she said. She said, I'm always feeling more aggressive. I take way more risk, and that is something that testosterone does to your brain. Now, and there are women who take risks, but there are far more men who will take crazy risks. And I think there is an evolutionary thing to that. Just as if you look at the animal kingdom, and anywhere in the animal kingdom, that seems to be common among mammals, that males are more aggressive and are more risk. You know what I mean? So that's
the weird thing is how everybody's like risk averse. Even the men, it's harder to get the men to come to Speaker's Corner than it is the women. Like, so it's a weird flip. It's a weird flip. Now the men have probably a little more to lose, right? Because usually they're the breadwinners, or like the main breadwinners. They get paid more, so they have more to lose when they're exposed. So I get that, but okay, I'm gonna try to unwind what you just asked me. You're saying the differences between the feminists, how this seed planted in feminism, and it's very similar to GI, like it has the same idealistic concept behind it. So the liberal feminists, now I don't like it goes back, like I don't blame them, right? Because we also have this top down of like a cabal of billionaires that are pushing an agenda for profit, right? So we have that happening at the same time that women, the liberal feminists are going along with it, right? So it's all kind of balancing right there, right? Now, the liberal feminists have an idealism in their feminism that if they just ignore the differences in the sexes, then we'll be equal. That's really kind of the gist of it, right? Like ignore it and we can just close your eyes and we can just have it and it will be great. Let's just force it through, even though it doesn't make sense, right? So they have this sort of in their feminism, as long as the world and everybody loves each other and the world is, we can aim towards that and we can ignore this huge elephant in the room and move forward. That's their view, right? And that kind of came into play back when in the 80s when women were, heading to the workforce in numbers. They got their little blazer with the big shoulder pads and they played the little man game, right? To get ahead. It was like, if you come into the workforce, you have to play a little man game instead of be a woman, because that's how we accept you. you have to play our game. So like I do think that, yeah, it's in their feminism. Is it completely their fault, or did they kind of bend with the circumstances and went along with it? So then now we're playing a game with men. Hey, there's no difference between us, the women, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not like we don't, or you're not allowed to talk about the differences. You're not allowed to, you know, anything sexual, any kind of like, even like the slightest flirtation at work is, you know, off limits. I'm really just a little dude. I've got the big shoulders. I'm going to wear a big bright red coat so that I take up space and, you know, and room, right? So we're playing this game for what, 10, 15 years, and women are moving up. They're breaking glass ceilings, you know what I mean? Like, but it's few. The masses are not. The masses of women are taking the regular, you know, cashier job, or like they're not moving up the corporate ladder. But there is a chunk that is. So we're looking at them and we're like, hey, good. You know, we want people to break through these barriers, right? And not all
But
women are going to, but at least
know,
there's an upper echelon that will.
but you know what they're also not taking? They're not taking the clean out the latrine jobs either. They're not. So you know,
yeah.
there's
Yeah, but you know, they're taking the clean up the dude in the nurses, you know, they're taking some shit jobs. They're
right.
cleaning up old people that are, you know, shitting their pants. It's not like, you know, like it's not totally equal, but there's plenty of shit jobs on the women's side, right? Like that they in masses take.
And here's where you find in more the most people would label the most egalitarian places, countries in the world. For the Nordic countries, for example, they like to use that example. But where there's more egalitarianism, sometimes there's even a bigger split in what kind of jobs people take. Again, because of some natural differences between men and women. I don't know. I say natural, but average differences between men and women.
Yeah.
Where women tend to deal with people, men deal with two things. That's a really generalization of it, but that's kind of where it is. So people complain, oh, there's not enough women in engineering. Well, there's not enough women who are interested in engineering. You know, it's not like that they're
and why is it
go ahead.
Why is it looked at that way? Why are we you know, reviewing it like that? If women, like, because what happens is when you have a field dominated by women, it becomes the subfield, right? Like that's why they're pushing, like, women go into tech, because that's what we've labeled important, right? As a society, tech is where you make the money. You know, like it's not taking care of the elderly, right? That's not the cool thing, right? So
But
if you take care of the elderly, look forward to a $10 an hour job. But if you learn fucking numbers in tech, you know, you're going to get paid you know, 100,000. It's like we've placed value on things, and then we're like, you know, well, women don't tend to go in that field. Well, it's like the reason we're talking about it is because that field is where the money's at, and there's no money in taking care of grandpa. You know, so it's our priorities that are really kind of screwed.
If you look at medicine, or if you look at particularly veterinary medicine, which is a high value field for many people because people love their pets. They spend millions on their pets, right? That's dominated by women. So that's a high area field, or high value field. But I think part of it too, and you know, because I always, whenever someone starts talking about wage gaps, for example, well, there's also a number of hours work gap, and that's probably because there are some women, a large part of women, who say in the end they go, oh, I want to spend more time with my kids. I'm not going to work 17, 18-hour days. Whereas and is that a cultural thing, or is that has some kind of natural thing to it because you see the same thing in parts of the animal kingdom, for example? So
of course, it's natural that women want to be with their children. I mean, how is that unnatural? You want that. We are now in a system where a lot of women don't have a choice. They have to go to work. So it's like, it's natural. And then they have to go to work in some shit field because their work is not valued as much as men. And if you think about the wage gap, well, I mean, were those numbers, where's the sex industry added to those numbers? Because women take some fucking dangerous jobs in the sex industry. That's more dangerous than the oil rig guys. And do they add those to the numbers? Because I mean, the wage gap, like, it's the value set that sets the differences in what people are being paid. Yeah, I want to pay the plumber a good wage because I want my freaking toilet to flush. But I also want somebody to take care of my mother who's sick if I can't, right? Like, but we value those things differently, right? Well, first of all, the plumber only has to come for 3 days and it's fixed. I have to pay somebody every day to take care of my mother. So it's like, it's an economic thing where in the long run, the plumber's, because he's going to 50 different houses, he's getting that big hit each time he does, the magic of plumbing. Right. But the commitment that a caretaker for my mother, if she was sick, she's going to the same house and hitting the same resource, right? Like hitting me up for money each week, right? Of course, she's not hitting me, I'm paying her, but like, so it's there's some of it won't be solved because like, it's just financially not feasible for one family to, pay the plumber and the caretaker the same amount, because then the caretaker would end up making 50 grand a year. And like, unless I make 200, I can't afford that. Right. Like I have other bills and, other things to pay. So I mean, I don't think I think it's more of a priority thing of like respect and valuing work too. Because women aren't as, like, I guess not, I wouldn't say ambitious, but I think they're more likely to go into a field where they're getting rewards beyond money, like it is rewarding taking care of sick people.
Or life balance. Or life balance.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that's why I laugh anytime I hear about that, because on average, men and women do different things. And also have different reasons for doing things. We're kind of getting off track.
And men make up for the losses there. I mean, a lot of men make up for the losses. So it's like, if you're married and your husband, I'm happy that my husband's making more money because, like I want someone to make money, like I want someone to get paid well. So but like, and then I've made an agreement with my husband basically when I had kids that like, hey, while I'm doing this, you have to take care of me because like, this is our family. Like, I mean, so there's lots of work, there's lots of negotiation there. And I know that doesn't, make people happy that like, hey, we don't have the same, but it's the fact we know we don't have the same opportunities, like we already know that. Can we ever equalize it? If we start valuing community and family, it will get more equal, but like, that's not the world we live in. I mean, right now things are really, really bad.
And I know what you're saying about if we value community, but I disagree because on average, men will always work more hours. And if you go just by hours alone, and also
more hours that are on the clock, but like hours of labor. I mean, is the man doing?
On average, yes. Men average 45 hours a week. Women average about 37 hours a week on average.
Right, and but they're doing a lot of unpaid labor at home. Right?
Oh, no, I'm not.
So
saying,
more
I'm not
unpaid
talking,
labor.
Yes, absolutely. But unpaid labor is like, for example, my own house. So my wife and I, when we had kids, we divided labor in everywhere we went because we had to make sure that we could, live the life we were living and with our kids and be able to afford to do the things we wanted with our kids and whatnot. So we made conscious efforts at different times in their development on who was going to do more and who was going to do less. And so I know we talk about the argument of unpaid labor, when it comes to your family, as a it's I hate to say labor versus responsibility. You know, I always, I know people want to say it's unpaid labor when one person does this, but that balances out the fact that one's doing more labor outside the house, so there's a balance to it. Now, if both
one's doing more prioritized, one's doing higher paid labor outside the house, right? So it's like it's because we're all working for our family, right? Like we're all like, I mean, it's arbitrary the way we get paid, right? Like we all wake up, we're animals, right? We work for our families. He's putting in, 40 hours a week and I'm putting in 80 because like I'm nonstop with this child, right? Like a child is demanding from morning till night, right? And then he comes home and I'm like, you play with that kid while I make dinner. So you're dividing up the labor, but like when it comes down to it, I think most women do most of the unpaid labor, even if they have jobs. I think men,
tend to, yes.
do that is sort of, yeah. So I don't, I mean, it is what it is. That's how people negotiate in their families, like you can't really, is that feminism? I mean, like, I don't think feminism's to blame. Like, even with the gender ideology, because we'll get back to gender ideology, even with the gender ideology stuff, there might be threads of feminist theory and gender theory that are similar, but it still takes the men to act this out, to make this happen. And like, if you go back to the Iraq war, that was mostly men. And nobody talks about that. But then it's like,
let me go back. I don't understand what you meant.
Okay.
By it takes mostly men to what? I didn't catch that.
I can't remember if you're going back farther or if it was just something I just said. It's
when it comes to gender ideology, you said it takes men to make that happen. I'm not sure what you meant.
Yeah. Well, like with the GI stuff, it takes an autogynephile to invade a woman's space in the bathroom. Like feminists are not forcing an autogynephile to a man to go into a woman's space. It takes them to go in the space first and then us to react, right? So it's, I mean, I guess there are some women going in the men's room on your side, but the threat is so great on our side that, we did not, even though the theory might have like opened the door to this, right? But we did not, act it out. We're not acting it out, right? The feminists aren't acting it out. Only on the libfem, I guess, on the libfem side. I don't know. The feminists, their theory, this is what I say. Let's just say they made a major mistake, right? Let's just say that was not the road to go down, right? I mean, like the men, the groups of men, like with the Iraq war, they've made major mistakes and nobody even gets arrested. Nobody even goes to jail. The banks, all men. Okay. So if you want to focus on just like, if you want to focus on like the feminists fucking up, even if it's the libfems, which I don't agree with the libfems, but like, why are we focusing on the feminists? Like, yeah, okay, that theory was in there. So was the bullshit with Iraq about lying to everybody about which country, so was Lehman Brothers. Like, so to focus on the women, it's like, okay, I'll admit for all feminists, it was a fuck up. Let's move on. Now we're in deep shit. We're in deep shit. Focusing on the fuck up of, gender theory and feminist theory isn't going to get us out of this deep shit. We have to realize like this is infecting every area of our society, and it's really just, the gender stuff is really just a reflection of what's going, it's sort of the tip of the iceberg that's so easy to identify, right? We cannot say what we think. That's what we're identifying. We are not allowed to say what we think, right? And they want to put words in our mouth and make us say something, make us say lies. That's really like the pinnacle of what we're looking at. So like we can go into like the past of, and we can fight with, you know, whoever. I don't even argue with the the anti-women's rights activists. I don't argue with them because we start with absurdities and go nowhere. Why would I waste my time? I want to meet people that don't believe in this shit, that want to fight against it, and that realize how dangerous it is. So like I get I get like I have a lot of conversations with men, and at first I didn't really realize it because I was like, what? Like, okay, yeah, I can see, but don't you understand, the feminists back then were making moves just to get out there, right? And if it was a game where we played there's no difference, then they thought that was okay because it was like, hey, if this is how we can do it, we're going to climb this ladder, right? And then it all fell apart because the men decided to take that theory and push our boundaries, right? And it probably wasn't fair when the women do. It probably wasn't a good idea.
Yeah, not just the men, but the men you're talking about, the men who have decided that they are women. I'm assuming what you mean, but that's
well, no, the men.
Because here's the other part that we kind of forget about, and I think it's important to talk about, because especially in the younger people, the Tumblr generation, right? Right now, it's young girls who are the ones being pushed into this too. So when we look at the hospitals that are doing surgeries on minors, what's the more common surgery the younger they are is the double mastectomies, the top surgeries, or whatever they want to call it. It's still, which I see as a mutilation on someone who has no idea what their life is going to be like 5 years from now. But so it's turning, and like you said, you've, by doing the speakers courting, you're making it a speech issue as much as anything else, because it is, because right now on social media you're not allowed to say some of these things. You can't be reality. You can't say that. They want to force you to be able to say these pronouns. If you're talking to this, you can't say what their former name was. So you get in big trouble for all those things. But it's not just but now it's not just the male to female. It's the teachers who are pushing this. The people who, all those people who were on Tumblr 8 to 10 years ago, that's where your teachers are coming from now. And that's it's crazy. Yep. So we're seeing the fights in the schools. We're seeing the fights, they're calling parents terrorists for even saying what they, saying that this is nuts. So I understand where you're coming from on this. You start out with the speech part of it, and that's the scary part. You're not allowed to speak your mind.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think I started RevFoXX to work with men. So I don't have anything against men, right? And I got into feminism and picked radical feminism because that was the one that aligned with my values as much as possible, right? Like, I'm not going to agree with everything in this broad category, right? Like, so I kind of honed it down. I found people were so afraid to step up and publicly speak that the feminists were the only ones doing it. So I was like, I guess I'm going to have to go with this group. And I did look over, like the value system of radical feminists versus liberal feminists. And I thought, well, I'm going to join the ones that agree with me, and I can.
But yours has been mostly focused on this issue. And that's I see that.
Well, this issue is so dangerous.
I agree. There's going to be a huge mental health crisis among young people in 5 to 10 years.
There already is. That's why there already is. That's why it's taken root. Like we left them alone with the computer and let these people put anything in their brains. That's what we did. as like Gen Xers, as the adults in the room, we left a generation alone with Mark Zuckerberg feeding them whatever he wanted to frickin' feed them, or the head of Tumblr or Twitter and the porn and all that shit. We let them just do whatever, and until we finally caught up. Like the parents finally caught up and was like, okay, I guess I shouldn't give my kid a phone with porn pouring out at 10 years old. Like I shouldn't, I better put a block on that. But for a while, we just let it. It was like the Wild West. So they inserted anything they wanted. I mean, they inserted propaganda even for us. We watched Jazz castrate himself, and nobody, like, you think the whole, you think a bunch of men would have went and protected Jazz, like that's pretty hitting it close to home, right? Like, but nobody, we just sat and watched while we like were pacified. And it's so bizarre that like collectively we've just sort of accepted this, and then we're finally at the stage where people are questioning it publicly, but like they're picking us off. The people that question this publicly, I mean, I had a following of 5,000 on Twitter, and I had get kicked off. They this was just a couple of kids focused on me and got me kicked off, like retarded kids. Okay, like they have no idea what the hell, have no wisdom whatsoever, can get me thrown off, and then I have to rebuild again. So like that's the illusion too, is like I should have whatever 15,000 followers, but they keep you small. Once you get to 5,000, you're out, right? So they keep you small, so you never really build momentum. And there's a whole plan to keep us down. And you enter, you're like one person. That's why I started 2 groups, because I'm like, we have to do this together. And then the feminists have to work together, and then once we find groups, we have to reach out to moderate groups, to libertarians, to anybody that's against this gender ideology in the schools, in the bathrooms, in the prisons, in our crime stats, right? Like, what are our crime stats going to look like when we lie about who the hell was doing what? We're saying men or women are committing like child molesting crimes. In 10 years, there's going to be harsher sentences for women, because we do so many, child molesting crimes, but really it's a dude in a wig when you go back to the original archive. And then even if you can find that, because they'll hide that, they changed the Wikipedia. When I came into this, that's what I started with, Wikipedia. I tried to get a group of editors to fight the trans rights activists that are changing freaking history in Wikipedia. Wikipedia is the #1 source of information that people go to, right? And that, like, my team got banned, and we had to like go offline and then reassemble, and every time they see anybody gaining momentum in this area, they figure out how to stop it. They'll send their freaking zombie parasites out to get you, right? Like that. I mean, it's insane. It's insane. And then there's like the rest of the world that just is like, it's not my problem. I have to go to work. Blah, blah. Well, it's gonna be your problem, honey. Wait until it's already your problem, because you can't even get a job without bowing to the pronoun police. You can't even get that's money. They're going after your money. You can't, unless you agree to their bullshit, you can't even get a job. So it is everybody's problem. And it's like, that's another bullshit line. They say, oh, it's just women's problem, because then men can ignore it, right? Like, oh, it doesn't concern me. But like, the problem needs to be situated so that everybody can understand, no, this is your problem. You want to live under Mao? You want to get re-educated by the kids? Like, this is everybody's problem.
So you do recognize this somewhat Marxist tendencies of the ideology. I see you threw Mao in there. Hey, real quick, I got to go to a couple of the super chats, paid chats. First one, I have just to let you know, I have a series of serial killers who donate to my channel for some reason. Richard Ramirez with a small bullet says, "Mind if I pay a visit?" No, Richard, stay away. Thank you. Also, tireless finishing point here. It says, you want male assistants to fight your civil war, but you have to you have to something, a sect of feminism that has demonized us. I'm saying, men, has attacked us. You want our help to win your war. To me, it seems like a catch-22 to assist or not. Again, when I hear feminism, I get gun shy. That may be that may be part of the thing when you you sometimes have difficulty to get men to your events, but I like the fact that you're reaching out to men on that. So good for you on that. Thank you, Tyler Alexander.
Well, the men are angry. Yeah, the men are angry. I mean, I get this a lot. We're like, you want our help, blah, 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 right? Because when they came and said, like, that's not normal. That kid is a boy. And then the women were like, no, you're just an asshole. Let that boy identify, right? The men were probably the first to not fall into the empathy trap because, men and women are different. And then they were told they were bad. They were like, you're bad. You don't have empathy. You stay out of it, right? So men were told they were bad and they're angry about it.
There you go, acknowledging There you go, acknowledging men and women are different again. That's gonna get you in trouble. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Anyway. Well, they and I get that I get his sentiment, but but the news I'm bringing is it's spilled over to men, honey. You better pay attention because whatever sorry about that. Sorry, I got a call. Whatever anxiety or anger you feel that the women put you in this position or whatever, whatever that is, that's in the past. That's already happened. We're in trouble now. And it's not just women. Women are under more threat, but your freedom of speech is gone. If we don't have it, you don't have it. We are intertwined with men. Our society, works together. Yeah, women made a mistake. Okay, they made a mistake. They were fed a line of propaganda going back probably since the 90s, right? And that was geared towards our empathy and our child rearing and those motherly instincts, right? Men got a different set of propaganda, right? Women got Ally McBeal, a baby in the bathroom, but unisex toilets are great and nothing ever happens. You just talk to a baby in there. It's not like a guy's trying to rape you or anything, right? So that was a long time ago, 90s. And we had, Orange is the New Black, we had what was next? It was the Boys Don't Cry, where it's this sympathetic trans character that gets killed, right? And then and it's a story, but that's the focus, right? So that's the story we were told, that they need protection. And then you have Orange is the New Black, where the dude is harmless, but women are ultra violent. Then you have Jazz, right? Where we just sit back placated and watch this kid get freaking experimented on. So women were and those are just a few, you could, if you go in your history and try to remember when was the first time I saw something weird about this, you'll come up with your own line of history. Now men got a different propaganda thing where it was fast and loose, don't commitment is bad, commitment to your family is bad, you should want this plethora of women and ass grabbing and blah blah blah. So they got sold this whole freedom lifestyle, and when they questioned the women about what's going on with the kids, they got the cold shoulder and told to, you're bad, go away. So fuck it. I'll just do, they don't want my opinion. I'll just live this, this free life fantasy or whatever. So there was different propaganda and different things aimed at men and women to divide us further. But at this point, if you're still stuck on the feminist in it, that's a problem with, I'm sorry to say that's a
That
problem within
that
you, because like,
that was just me bringing it up, because it's something that just I've been following this for years, and I go, well, wait a minute, where did this come from? So I'm not saying that you in particular, the feminists that I agree with are just different, are the ones who brought this on. I've been following Magdalene Burns, 8-9 years ago, before she passed away, and she was adamant. She didn't care if they called her TERF. She was like, no, there's a difference between women and blokes. It's that is what's it? I can't think of the word I was trying to think of. But anyway, hey, let me go to a couple just real stories, just real quick.
Okay.
The ones that you have commented, or I've seen you've comment on, because this one's especially interesting to me, and I can't find the tweet and article that did it, but there's a story about a trans U.S. Army major doctor and spouse. And I'm just going how the first article I read about this presented it. And spouse that have been charged in a plot to leak confidential health information to the Russian government. Major Jamie Henry was previously praised for being the first active duty Army officer that came out as trans. Now, the first article I read about this was fascinating. I think it was from CBS News. Described them as husband and wife, and used he to describe Jamie Henry, they made this huge deal a few years ago about him being the first trans Army officer, whatever. And so this entire article, I read the entire article through, and I'm like, oh, this is messed up. They're selling shit to the Russians, right? And then I saw a second article, and I saw a picture of him in makeup and earrings, still looking very well. This is a very prominent Adam's apple. I'm like, wait a minute, is that the same article I just read? They hid the fact that he was trans in the first article. Then all of a sudden, all the other articles coming out finally saying, I think the Daily Mail came out showing that this was this trans woman, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think they were trying to hide it, that this person was trans, to avoid any backlash towards trans people?
Of course. They hide it all in the Will Thomas article. Okay, I had focused on Will Thomas, and I went to Sheer Pool in Philly, and it was the first time there was so much press there, and nobody had really focused on him yet. So, but I had moved to Pennsylvania, so I was like, I'm driving to Philly. It's in my geographical sphere of influence, right? So I get to Philly. It's just me and Joy. This is when I was doing RevFem Rebellion, and there's a ton of press there, and they really wanted to get us in the paper, the press. There were a few. The Associated Press, the guy was kind of a jerk. The Daily Mail did something, and the Washington Post. We got in the Washington Post. Well, the first article in the Washington Post, I knew the woman that wanted to get us in, right? I knew that she was on the pro reality side. She wrote the article, and the only time she used the correct pronouns was one sentence within the body of the article. Now, this is back in December. That's all she could sneak in, right? Because the reporters are also trying to get this story out, but they're being suppressed. So it was incorrect pronouns. And then in the body of the story, there was one sentence where the correct pronouns were working. And she told me she was going to try to get something in. And so I was like, oh, good. She got it in. That was a celebration. Okay. Because that's how fucked up our media is. Okay. That was a celebration that she got one sentence in the Washington Post. An hour later, I screenshot it. An hour later, they had changed it. So
Right.
like they're just doing what I mean, like we don't have free speech. This isn't just some private company that's doing this. It's a collected, it's a combined effort. There is the drug companies and a cabal of men, of autogynephiles that got together and have planned this and are pushing this down and like is it to get into the like Elon Musk transhumanism stuff? Yeah, you could go there with it, but really, like, think about the tool that they have now. They can get us to say things we don't believe. They can compel our speech and say things we don't believe. It doesn't really matter what their weird, objective is when you're on the street, and that's against our Bill of Rights. You know what I mean? Like that's against our what we believe as a democracy. So it doesn't really matter what the agenda is. They want to confuse us and get us mired in their agenda and like talk about their complicated theory, and it's all bullshit. What the real fact is, we don't have free speech in America. That's a huge freaking problem. And it's some group of men cabal that wants to push some idea on us so that they can make money off our kids, so that they can chop up our kids and make money and get us to capitulate to whatever they want us to say. That's what this is. This is a power and control. They want to control, the 99% basically. So like anybody can come in on this issue, because it's not just about the protection of women and girls and the protection of children. This is real. This is real. They are using this to divide us further. And then they throw in the Roe v. Wade stuff. What does that look like? To me, that looks like they wanna divide the states, right? I mean, we don't know what laws are going to roll out after Texas has, a strict rule and Illinois doesn't. Is there going to be border patrol? Are we going to be questioning women? Are they going to follow our movements? Like, we don't know what's going to happen with that.
I'm not so sure that decision can be related to this, though. I think those are two very distinct issues as far as why. I think the whole gender ideology thing muddles the water for what's real and what's not, and helps people get control over what you can and cannot say. The Roe versus Wade thing has been being fought for 50 years, and there's always been two very distinct sides to it. That at some point pendulums swing, and this is where the pendulum swung at this point. But I don't think they're related. I think the gender ideology people would never support or even think of using the overturning of Roe versus Wade in any relation to the gender ideology. They're completely against it. So, and there's that now that's a topic too.
Wait. Yeah, but if you look at it, like there's a cabal, right? There's a group that is in the dark, right? We don't see them. They're controlling both sides, both the Republicans and the Democrats.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
We have
the uniparty system that people complain about a lot. I see what you're saying, but
oligarchy, the world, the world domination, the one that, because this is all over the world. This isn't
World Economic Forum and stuff like that. I see what you're saying. I think, I think that completely. The reason that most of the people who would be in that camp, none of them like the fact that the Supreme Court has done that. I think they're completely against. I think if you talk to the World Economic Forum type people, they absolutely reject that, and you see it in our media. You can kind of follow what the most common media, the most popular media out there does, as far as, and that's pretty much the same page as what the World Economic Forum. The most popular media hates the fact that Roe versus Wade was overturned. and they love gender ideology. They push it all the time. If you look at Hollywood, they push it, gender. I mean, everything in entertainment right now has gender ideology in it. Those people are completely dumbfounded that Roe versus Wade got overturned. They don't. That's not in their agenda. I think. I see where you can say where it can cause chaos by different states doing different things, but I don't think that for a second that those two things are on the same page. The people who think that, you know, a fewer governments in the world, more controlled by an entire, you know, an economic cabal, has any interest in that, because they're
who does it serve, right? Who does it serve, right? That's really,
it doesn't serve the people who are trying to lower population. That's who it does, and that's it. A lot of that World Economic Forum seems to be, it seems to be that they want fewer people in the world. They want more control over more people in a more centralized world type government. So I'm just saying it's not, that doesn't fit their model.
It's just an odd coincidence that as Republicans are gaining, you know, political ground because of the GI stuff, we have a issue thrown in, right? That now we have to face, you know, now we have to, as a population, we have to face that, you know, they didn't codify Roe v. Wade. They're throwing it back to the states. So this is thrown in right at the time when we're fighting gender ideology, and the Republicans are able to maybe talk about this and get elected, right? They're able to, hey, do you want Will Thomas in your thing? So now they have, the Republicans have this issue that's been contentious. We know how freaking contentious this is. And we know that, like, most people like agree that after, you know, maybe agree at 12 weeks, or there is an agreement that, like, most Americans they're not anti-choice. They just don't want, like, you know, you had 100 abortions. You know what I mean? Like, they're a little bit more like live and let live. And now we've put most people. I'm not saying like
even a large portion of my audience is very you know, pro-life, but I'm in that camp where it has to be legal, even though I think it's a barbaric practice at some point, especially at a certain point in development. That's a whole other story. Hey, let's stop there, because let's stop there because we're running out of time, and I got to do my lightning round, because I just want to lighten it up a little bit. And so, and I do this, I'm trying to do this with guests. So I have a series of I think it's like 10, 12 questions that we go through that are quick lightning round answers. And you don't have to elaborate. I just that I like to ask. So let's just have some fun. First of all, and also real quick, thank you, Keeverdam, with the dropping a 5 through super chat, who says, good morning, everyone. Welcome. And I know I didn't say good morning, everyone, on the chat like I normally do. Thank you so much for being here. Reminder, please hit the like button sometime before we close out, and share the stream before, during, after. If you're watching a replay, put a comment in the comment section. And you can sponsor the show at pdognight.live. That's where you can watch the show, participate in the chat, and donate to the channel, or super chats, or Venmo Cash App in the description down below. Now, let's do a lightning round with Jen Thomas. This is her first experience with the lightning round, and there's also possibly, if I have time, a couple bonus questions. So let's start now. Lightning round. First lightning round question. This is just simple. Texting or talking?
Talking.
Good. Okay. Favorite day of the week? Friday. Okay. Survey says. Okay, that's an acceptable answer. Very good. Now this one's very subjective. We'll see. Favorite city in the United States besides the one you live in?
Chicago.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's not a great answer. But Chicago's a fun town. I live in Chicago. I have lots of friends who live there. Anyway, okay. A nickname your parents used to call you?
Genevieve.
Okay, there's no wrong answer, so you get a bell on that one. Okay. The last song you downloaded, and if you don't download songs, the last song you listened to.
Low, the band Low,
Oops,
Lullaby.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that song. Next. Would you rather be able to speak every language in the world or be able to talk to animals?
Well, isn't that both? Right. It's a trick question.
Every
Yeah,
world.
talk to animals because that covers it all. Because human beings are animals too. So I could talk to anyone then, right?
Oh,
I wouldn't need
damn.
languages.
That's cheating, but you're going to get us a bell just for that one. Okay, favorite holiday?
Halloween.
Oh my gosh, you're the first person to ever answer that one right. Good job. How long does it take you to get ready? And I'm not going to say get ready for what. How long does it take you to get ready?
40 minutes.
Judges? Acceptable? Good. All right, there we go. Scale of 1 to 10. How good of a driver are you?
10.
Everybody lies about that one. I'm sorry. That's
I have a bubble of protection that surrounds me at all times. So I don't it's just, I'm a good driver and I don't really have to. I have this beautiful car, and every time I get in it, I say that I have a bubble of protection, and it especially surrounds the car. It's like, I know nobody's going to touch my car. So that helps with my driving. And
I drive a big ugly pickup, so nobody bothers me. Anyway,
the trick to good driving is, instead of hitting the brake, hit the accelerator when you're in trouble.
Oh, well, I'm gonna give you a bell for that one. All right, fill in the blank. Taylor Swift is
awesome. I love Taylor Swift.
At what age would you like to retire?
I will probably never retire.
Oh, that's interesting. Because I would retire tomorrow if I could. Well, anyway. All right. Last couple on the regular round. Invisibility or super strength?
Super strength.
Okay. There's no wrong answer, so there you go. And the last in the regular round, which Avocados Diablo reminded me of, is cereal soup.
Pardon?
Is cereal soup?
No. No, you need like you need bones or something for soup, not just carbs.
Yeah, I have friends who say that cereal and soup are the same thing. All right, and then finally, the bonus round questions: Coke or Pepsi?
Coke.
All right, that is the right answer. All right, so there you go. Okay.
What am I being graded against? Like, how am I getting right answers? I don't get that.
I just make up the right answers. This is just a fun round to do. Anyway, so Jennifer Thomas, I would like to thank you for joining me today on the Morning Night Live. It was a fun talk, and I feel like I learned a few things about your group and what you do, and I hope you enjoyed it. Anything else you would like to say to the audience before we go?
Well, I feel like it was a little discombobulated. I think we need another interview to kind of go over because this is such a, I mean, it's not complex, but there are a lot of complexities to this issue. It's very simple. We're being told to lie, basically, and it's state sanctioned, totalitarianism trying to control our speech. That's really the gist of it. But I could tell you so many stories. I'd love to tell you some of the on the ground stuff that I've run into, because I've done probably over at least 40 protests over the past 2 years. And not just protests, speakers corners, and press conferences, and there's just so many stories to talk about, and we barely touched the surface. But yes. So if you want, I'm on Twitter. I'm RevFem Street Beat, STBEAT, RevFem Street Beat, and then I have RevFoXX as the org that is we're working together to do Speakers Corner. We also focus on like specific side projects of like if there's like I went to Loudoun, if there's a rape in a school, I want to like highlight what's happening, because I do have kind of a little bit of a platform that I can get stories out. So I do other things besides Speakers Corner. But I really feel like, like just like I focused on the Will Thomas thing, I pick exposure buttons so that it reveals what's happening, right? So I keep hitting the exposure button, and I'm going to keep hitting the exposure button on the free speech. And so that is, basically breaking new territory. The anti-women's rights activists will come. But like, I also want to get in there and go to like friendly zones and mix with people that are willing to stand up against this on the street, because we have people online standing up against it, but it won't really our political leaders, unless we basically bum rush the capitals and like and get our events like on this alternate media. They won't see how much, like they won't see how they're going to get a big surprise in November, but like they also need to see like people on the street, because when people go to the street, they like one person on the street represents 1,000, right? So when thousands come to the street, they'll start to get scared that they can't push this agenda. And it is on both sides. If you're a Republican and you think you're safe, you're not safe. I mean, when I was at the TERFs Take Back Abortion Rights, I went there with Our Bodies, Our Turf sign. Now, I'm not going to get into like my views on abortion. That's another show. But a group of right-wing trans activists surrounded us screaming, "Trans rights start at conception," right? So it is in the culture of the conservatives too. I
can almost guarantee you that those weren't right wing. Here's why. Because that's a mesh. They consider you right wing for not buying into the trans ideology. So what I'm pretty confident, and I've seen this where there's been a protest or something like that, where they will say, "You bunch of right wingers." I'm like, these people are not right wing by any stretch of the imagination. And so I'm guessing
I'm sure that they are a fringe group. There's no doubt in my mind about that. But like even at the Title IX 50th, you still have Republicans kind of mired in the language. They'll call, so they're still confused. They don't really know how to approach this. They're still afraid of they're afraid of, the LGB power that's behind this. They're afraid of looking bad. The Republicans are just catching up on this, right? They're just starting to see how, and to me, if you're in politics and you're just starting to see this, like, I'm sorry, but like, I just find it ridiculous. I find it unbelievable that when you say
the right starting to get it, you're starting to see the Matt Walsh, the Christopher Rufo, the Colin Wrights, who are kind of also join this fight with big platforms. And even though they don't necessarily acknowledge it, the feminists who've been on this for a long time, even the libs of TikTok, whatever, Chira, whatever her name is, you're starting to see a lot more people push back on this, and you're starting to see some results. For example, the University of Oklahoma is ceasing certain gender medicine services for minors because the state has threatened funding. So you're starting to see some results, some different legislation, and there's going to be a big fight over this for a while. But I think once you start seeing research, once they start looking at stuff that's happening in Finland and Sweden where they've stopped doing this shit, there's going to be research that's not activist forced research, because right now all the research in the United States is not necessarily research, it's activism disguised as research. And so now you're starting to see some
there's everybody. The research people need to come. The Matt Walshes of the world need to come. I mean, like, that's why I'm like, this shit is so freaking dangerous that, like, I will cross political lines to fight it, right? Like, because it is like it first of all, any area that it goes in, it infects with poison. Like every area that they apply gender ideology to, it degrades. It's a deconstructionist model. And what do you have left? They deconstruct out of existence. They will deconstruct us out of existence. That, and everything that doesn't make sense, but like the Matt Walshes and, the ones that are stepping in now, there's a lot of feminists, radical feminists that, kind of resent the fact that, like, oh, well, now a man's talking about it and he's getting attention. I don't really resent that. The only thing I resent about Matt Walsh is that he keeps saying that we're not inviting him to things. I invited him to the NCAA thing. I invited him to Port Townsend. Don't lie about that. You can say we disagree or whatever, but I don't like lies. That's what I don't like. Just say, yeah, I didn't go, whatever. I missed that opportunity, but don't say you weren't invited. That just causes more division. And that I want, but you know what, even barring that, I'm glad Matt Walsh is in the game, because he's bringing people to this issue, and it's so important. And we've been sidelined. So we do need, and like the guy that was like, you want men to come help you. Yeah. Help yourself, dude. Help yourself. Don't help me. Help yourself, because go try to speak about this in public and see how quickly you get silenced. That means you don't have free speech, man, not woman. You don't have it. So, like, I mean, and I don't mean to sound, jerky or anything. I'm like, whatever. You can have a different. You can even be mad at feminists with me. I'm mad at them too. You think I'm happy? A bunch of lib fems are freaking doing handmaiden shit with these guys. I'm not happy about that. They don't represent me. I understand the anger. Okay.
All right. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Thanks, P-Dog. It was nice talking to you.
It was great talking to you too. All right, I'm going to close it out. Hang on until I get done with the outro here. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for Jen Thomas coming here today. It was great talking to her. And activism is sometimes you actually got to put some skin in the game, and Jen is doing that. And I think this is an important issue, especially with mental health of children at stake for almost an entire generation that we're losing to this shit. So I appreciate people who are willing to put themselves out there and do this kind of stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for me to go. Thank you for everyone who's joined me in the chat. Thanks to our sponsors today, Kiva Dam, Tyre Alexander, Richard Ramirez. Even though Richard Ramirez, I want you nowhere near me. And if again, hit the like button, share the stream before, during, after, put a comment in the comment section if you're watching a replay. And if you want to sponsor the show, go to pdognight.live or other options in the description down below. Thanks, everybody. It's time for me to go. My name is P Dog Night, and I'm out of here. Bye-bye. Have a fantastic day. Hey, this is P-Dog Night, and thank you for watching today on the P-Dog Night channel. If you have an observation or remark you'd like to make about this video or my channel, I absolutely welcome you to write it in the comment section down below. I really look forward to hearing from you. And before you go, if you like what you saw but you're not already subscribed, please make sure you hit the subscribe button and definitely click that bell that pops up afterwards so you'll be notified when I post new videos or when we go live. I broadcast my live show, The Morning Night Live, Monday through Friday at 10 o'clock Eastern, 9 o'clock Central. A special thank you to all the supporters of this channel who share our videos on social media and who make donations through Streamlabs, YouTube, Venmo, and Cash App, which are all linked in the description down below. Thanks again, and until next time, I'm P-Dog Night, and I'm out of here.